My high sleep for the 8. Leo Coys and KTK. Lucas on the fly, causing turbulence. Causing waves on our way to the confluence. New voice for the fans. From the pitch to the stands. My high looks than the South Bank lads. Leo Coys and a homie crashed. Hold up, what's this? A raft on the water to the confluence. Yeah. It's chance, I'm bound up, rounds, I love that. Head to the wars if it's this, you're off the sea, free aid, this time is now. Locals on the jump to hold it down. Like the stream and do 5 stars. The mile high hearts burn, crash the car.
Yes, you filthy animals. Welcome back to the Confluence. My name is Leo Coys, the Mile High Hotspur, and I'm joined by my homie, the co-host of this here podcast, the driver of the Daddy Shuttle, and a certified rapid sicko. My homie Crash the Cars. KTK, talk to me, my homie. How are you doing?
Oh man, I am doing really good. It's a great week. My season, so as a coach, officially started this week. Unfortunately, we had to cancel training today because the if you're here in Denver, it's been crazy winds. We had some fires actually real close to up in North Glen, up close to where we train, and so we had to cancel tonight's practice, which is disappointing. It was funny because my wife and some of our other friends that have kids there, I gave them the knowledge of, hey, we're canceling training today, and they were all excited and happy because they didn't have to drive to the thing. I was like, no, I was like, boo. I sent them a gift, of big thumbs down, boo, because I enjoy it. I enjoy the time on the pitch. I enjoy coaching. I enjoy being with my kiddos out on the field, and so. Outside of that, I'm a little. I'm pretty happy that it's been a great week, and we had our first match day last week, which was a lot of fun.
Yeah, just so you guys know, my homie Crash runs a tight ship. A lot like this title: no hierarchies, no excuses, and no shirts are safe over there on Crash's team, my homie. So big up, big up. Look. Talking about bigging up, my homies, I want to say a massive thank you to everybody that has been tuning in, everybody that decided to tune in to our watch along that we had, Crash, which was our first experiment. It definitely was a fun time, homie. Not a great result, but still, it was a fun time had with you and the homies in the chat. Definitely something that we've been talking about that we want to do. So, Crash, I think it was a good first test run, my homie. I had fun. Looks like we'll definitely be doing it again. So, just wanted to say thank you guys for tuning in. And we're also now on the Blue Sky. We're trying to expand a bit more to get the name out there, my homies, to get more people to follow the Confluence, to hop on the podcast with us, and to just get this podcast in motion, my homie, to get things rolling with today's episode. Go ahead, Crash.
Oh, I was just gonna say, yeah, you can find us at on Blue Sky now at the Confluence Pod there. And then I did want to say thank you for everybody who jumped in with us on the watch along. It was our first go of it. We were only on YouTube this time around. But we have got it fixed and ready to go. So this X stream will be available on the next time around. So look for us on that next away day. We're going to do them as much as we can, and as much as you guys are enjoying them, we'll jump in and do them. So they're a lot of fun for hot takes, and hopefully this time around more excitement.
Yes, let's go. And one more time, big up the C38, big up the Mile High Locos, big up to Culeros, and big up everybody listening. Crash, let's get to the meat and potatoes of the podcast, my homies. Let's just dip our toes into the water a little bit, and let's talk about a now former Colorado Rapids player, one that we kind of felt was in limbo. We didn't know what was happening. The club were kind of making movements behind the scenes, brought in a new left back, and just like that, got rid of one. Didn't trade him. He didn't get transferred. They just bought out his contract and said, you know what? You're just surplus to requirements, my homie. We do not need you anymore. Crash, you have been kind of Not necessarily manifesting this, my homie, but you've read the writing on the walls. Let's just call it what it is. And what are your thoughts, my homie? Sam Vine's out the door, moving on to a new chapter, and just to kind of dip more into the water. It shows a bit of no hierarchy, no excuses, and the fact that no shirt is safe in this team.
Yeah, no, for sure. I was on the Commerce City Radio stream or on X on Friday before the match, and we were just chatting, have a good conversation. They look to have those every, I think maybe post match and pre match on a Friday. So if you do get a chance, jump on there. We were having some really good conversations about all kinds of different things. Braden and Mitch have a really good program there, and I definitely enjoyed it. But I threw out a bit of a hot take. I had seen a couple things. I had watched the Rapids podcast with Rob Holding on it, and some just other conversations about people. I think maybe with the interview with Zach Steffen prior, and the entire time nobody had mentioned Sam's name on anything, and we hadn't heard anything from the gaffer about anything surrounding Sam Vine. So I just had my questions, and then we saw Miguel Navarro come back, and it kind of put a big red flag up for me. And we all know Sam struggled. I think we've all seen it. We've all critiqued it. We've all had our own opinions on it. I think we all like Sam. But for me, it was a big red flag. And Coach Wells mentioned it, and we'll talk about it a little bit later. But yeah, I kind of mentioned, it's like, I think he's gone. I think Navarro's in because he's out, and they needed him to be in the office and ready to go for that game on Sunday for them to make the announcement. And sure enough, the next day, the next morning, I'm getting texts from everybody going, "You called it," and I couldn't believe it myself. But yeah, I think that for me was the fact that the front office actually made that move is bigger than actually him being off the team. The fact that they realized that they're not going to be able to get him traded somewhere, they're not going to be able to get money for him,
Fair shout.
his contract and his salary for what it was pretty high, and it'd be hard for another team to kind of swallow that. So yeah, big move for the front office to officially waive him and then officially buy him out. It means he's off the team. Luckily, he's I hope he lands somewhere somewhere close, or finds a good space for him, because he is a good player. I think he just never was in the right system for him to really shine. And I think a three center back, 3-5-2 or a 3-4-3 kind of setup would really benefit him, and to get back to that wing back that we knew of him when he shined here. So yeah, it's interesting. It'll be interesting to see what we do next.
Homie, and it's Wells has since come out and said how he blatantly wanted just the two fullbacks, the two left backs in his system, which kind of makes me bring it back. With the no hierarchy, it's obviously now you're starting to see things unravel, or I guess signs to be shown. And the three key departures for me this offseason, I can say, were Oliver Larraz, Cole Bassett, and Sam Vines, which were three huge players in the locker room, three huge names that I see on the back of a lot of jerseys when I'm at Dick's Sporting Goods Park, right? But probably three of the most comfortable people on the squad. So I think Matt Wells also just wants to stamp his seal on this squad, and doing so was, hey, I want two left backs. This guy's not going to cut it. Do you think maybe he just wanted to follow suit and say, like, was there just more behind the scenes that we probably haven't seen or haven't heard about, that these guys were just probably getting away with too much freedom or something, or just something that, what's the big, the old the old phrase, you're only as strong as your weakest link. And if you're having players like that around that can spread, the term is like a cancer in the locker room. I don't want to say that, but like just to kind of add some emphasis to what I'm trying to say is, could it be that Wells or the front office seen that little bit of, no buy-in, or that little bit of just not 100% focused on it, and you're out the door? I totally see that could be the possibility with the three players that I mentioned. Why? Because, bro, for the simple fact that they were homegrown. They were one of the first names that should have been on the team sheet. And like I said, Crash, a lot of fan favorite. These threes were fan favorites. So huge culture shift, huge statement, and it's almost a bold move. And I could say that, it's going to be performance over tenure. And that kind of goes tying into what he said about the young players as well. And just everybody who's showing that much more effort is not going to go unnoticed. And you're going to have a spot in this team. Sam Vines is not on this team anymore, my homie. So that makes me, as a fan, that much more happy, because I just know, Crash, it's going to sound wrong, but I just feel like they were bad apples, homie. I just feel like they're gone for a fucking reason, not because they weren't going to get the playing. They're gone because they weren't going to get the playing time because of underlining reasons. And that one right there, homie, is being too comfortable, the hierarchy, they're gone, homie, all three of them. And it's for the better of the team, as much as or as little as you want to accept that. And I'm talking to the Rapid fan. It was probably for the better, my homie.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think I will say, between Ollie and Sam, those two made sense, right? I think Ollie makes sense because we did have a lot of midfielders. We had a lot of talent there, and we
Yeah.
weren't going to give him necessarily the contract that he probably wanted. And he moved off to Vancouver and found a spot there. I mean, he even started in their CCC match today, if I'm not mistaken, right? So he's finding a place that he's getting some minutes, he's getting some time to prove himself, but I think he's in a good spot for the role he should be in. He wasn't going to find that here, or the system didn't work, and they made that call early, so that makes sense. Sam, we've all been challenged on that, and I think the system and different things, like we had mentioned, just didn't work out for him, and he never really lived up to his expectation or that salary. And I'm assuming that was a lot of what Wells looked at, and when that decision was made, I'm sure it was a front office. I'm sure it was, not just Matt making those decisions, but it was likely, like, I don't see him as the person I need him to be, and Jackson maybe is outperforming or putting in more effort, whatever metric Matt was looking at. And he probably looked at it from the perspective of, the dollar amount between the two team players. And, maybe the conversation was, I could get 3 more players for that rate and be better off than having the one person on such a high salary, or even 2, right? Think about, 2 solid players at that could be 2, Rafa Santos, or maybe, I don't know Miguel Navarro's salary, but I'm assuming it's in around the 300 to 400K range, right? Which is 2 of Sam. So I think that all those things kind of went into it, saying he's not going to make us better. And so let's do the thing. Let's get him, in a place where he can move on, and then we can move on and maybe make this team better. The real question is, do they do that?
Yeah. No, I agree, my homie. And so yeah, I guess just to move forward with the pod, homie, we got our first taste of the Rapids without our star players, and just to kind of add more sauce to it, this is a complete new look Rapids team that we saw on a Sunday night, dude. I'm sitting here thinking, like, thinking back, bro, just this time last year, complete different team from top to bottom. Crash, it's just crazy, bro. The amount of changes that we've had to the first team lineup. Let's start diving into the game, Crash. Just before we go into breaking it down or whatever, just give me your overall opinion, dude. How what was your impression overall?
Overall, boy, do we have a lot of work to do. That was my impression overall. I think, you mentioned last year and, when we opened with St. Louis last year and, open against Seattle this year. So, I mean, two completely different types of competition. We're playing this season. We opened with one of the hardest teams in the league. Last year we didn't. We opened with a good starter. We were much more established last year, so there's an expectation. This year there wasn't a whole lot of expectation, and so I think this year going into it, you could look back and say there might have been 3 people that were the same, like that were starters from last year. Zach, Hoffa, and I don't remember
Josh Atencio.
Josh Atencio. I think maybe Josh, maybe even Jackson. So it's maybe 3 people that were starters last season. So I think that's the interesting thing. There was a lot of turnover, and I probably didn't give it enough grace with a lot of my commentary and frustration at the beginning of that, knowing that we have a lot of room for growth. But man, overall, I was frustrated because, and similar to probably how Wells took it, I didn't know what they were doing in that first half. We weren't seeing anything that resembled what we had been told or what we had seen for some of the highlights that we had gotten. And I saw a team really struggling to do anything that I was told was Matt's vision. There was non-existent press. There was bad passes, bad thoughts, a lot of forced forced balls forward. The only bright spot I saw is they stuck with playing it out of the back, and luckily none of those mistakes or moments led to goals from that moment. Right? They never conceded a goal from playing out of the back, which I thought was a good sign. So, those were some of the things I was a little frustrated by. I would have loved to see more creative chances, but overall, man, it was kind of tough to watch.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and you kind of hit the nail on the head with the hammer, and you said it was just a tougher place to open as opposed to what we saw last season. So we went up against a team who in themselves also is notorious for having a slow start, but that doesn't mean they're always going to have a slow start. You know what I mean? They came out swinging themselves. Let's talk a little bit about the lineup, Crash, because there was definitely some surprises, if you will. Not to mention, the amount of changes from this time last year, but there was surprises in the fact that Rob Holding wasn't in the lineup. Right, we would have thought maybe he was going to get the start. We seen back pair of, was it Noah Cobb and why am I forgetting the young man's name? Yes. What was your opinion, bro? Just getting off of the what was your opinion on the team sheet? And I guess now that we're there, the formation, it was kind of tough, like you said. It's because it was a tale of 2 halves, but just breaking it down as a whole, what was your thoughts on the lineup in particular?
Yeah, the lineup was kind of predictable outside of the back line. Reggie Cannon got the start, which we expected. Obviously with Sam being waived on Saturday, we didn't expect Miguel Navarro to be, starting as he just got there with the team, so that would have been a challenge. So Travis made sense. But I think with Lucas and Noah Cobb, I think the surprise there was that they weren't at least paired with Rob. There's veteran leadership, there's knowledge, game IQ, all kinds of things there that especially in hindsight, I feel would be successful and help in those moments. But so I was a little surprised there. I would have probably loved to see Rob out there, especially watching that first half and some of the chaos that
Mhm.
ensued. Especially with Zach being the captain. I think not that Zach can't be the captain or that he's not a leader on this team. I just have a struggle with having goalies as captains. It's hard to keep the team connected. It's hard to communicate. Center backs, that's their job. Center backs naturally for me make sense, or even a defensive midfielder as a captain. Just for that space. So I was a little, those were some of my little surprises. I think Yappy at wing, we saw him start against Orlando and get a couple goals and or goal contributions, which was, that made sense. So midfield, Hamzat and Atencio, again, similar mindset. So really, it was just that back line that was the most surprising that we didn't have holding in it. But I guess it goes to show, Wells is, he's finding the person he thinks is producing the most and earning the shirt and that's what he said. He said, after the scrimmage in Orlando, Cobb earned it and didn't lose it. And so he
Yeah.
got the shirt that day. So it was interesting, but it made sense once you kind of hear from Wells, and that's how he wants to have the team operate. And I love that he's staying accountable to what he's asking from the guys and what he's promised them.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that in the sense that like I would want that type of environment in the workplace, right? Like if we all have the same opportunities, but yet I'm performing better, then I would want the nod, obviously, right? And um it's just a ballsy move, Crash, because if you don't get the results and you keep taking accountability like you should if you're the gaffer at that point, it's just bro, you got to make sure that the people that are you're basically putting your neck out for are going to repay you. And I hope that's the case with this young team. I said this before in pods previous, how we're gonna see minutes from these young players. You know what I mean? Um, this is gonna be the coach that's gonna give them their opportunities, and that right there is a ballsy move, to do that, and then to have the performance that we had in the first half, to then switch it up to, I guess, not a way better performance, but at least we started clicking. We started getting some ball movement. We started putting a couple of passes together, at least a couple more. Um, we had some more chances in the second half than I think we mustered up in the first. But man, we definitely lack. There was definitely a discrepancy there between the two teams, Crash, even first and second half,
Yeah,
which
there
just
was.
kind of shows that there's a huge, yeah, there's a huge gap there between both, just quality, right? And I mean, we just they looked far superior to us. Crash, what do you think, homie?
Yeah, no, I think so, and I'm not sure. I think our youth and experience, really shined on Sunday. It the challenges, especially with the first half being such a weird first half with
Yeah,
all the stoppages and all the injuries and all this, the red card and the yellow cards and
the
just
ref
all
had a
the
mirror
random.
too, Crash.
Whew, yeah, the ref, that was a struggle across the board. I just, and I think the other side of it, you could kind of go back and forth on a lot of different things, like that goal that was, rescinded. to me was a goal, right? I think,
Mhm.
the Seattle fans have all of um, the reason to be frustrated over that because it should have been like that was the softest foul I had ever seen, and also that was a big mistake there. The red card again on Cobb was also the same thing, right? He shouldn't have been sent off, and I'm glad that they reversed that. I just, so there was merit across the board of this ref wasn't cutting it, and so I think the players were feeling it. Some of the challenges and the different yellow cards that happened. I mean, yes, some of the team was playing sloppy, but sometimes I saw all ball on a lot of these things, and we're like, why are we getting these cards and these different things? I just thought the ref was kind of losing the game by really trying to control it with
Yeah.
with all his stoppages. So that was frustrating. So it's hard for a team to get into pace with that, but I did feel like the team just was overwhelmed. We were very passive.
Mhm.
There was no aggression. There was aggression, but it was in moments where they were frustrated and they got those cards, right? It wasn't, there weren't smart decisions a lot of the times, which I think makes sense, why some of those guys did get the cards. Even then I saw Paxton and a couple players going for balls with high boots with other players around. I mean, it was just a lot of things that it just didn't seem right. And it just felt like they were very almost scared, right? And so I think that was the big thing from the first half is just, we had a team that came out with their eyes wide open like they're deer in their headlights to a degree. And I just don't think it showed up.
Well, and then to speak a little bit on the game crash, it gets underway and we didn't implement any press whatsoever. In fact, we couldn't get anywhere near them. Um,
No.
and it took a quick lapse of judgment from the whole back line. I guess just kind of listening to Zach Steffen's instructions or something. I don't know. For their goal, the ball kind of looks like it's going out of bounds, and it kind of looks like all the players just give up on the play. And again, maybe Zach Steffen is kind of telling them something, or they go to get back into shape, and that's when Rothrock kind of just sends in the cross. And I think it was your tweet that I seen, Crash, where there's like 7 or 5 or 6, I didn't count how many Rapids players right there in the box. Rothrock picks out one of the two Seattle players in the box, and they end up scoring the first goal, I think like 14, 15 minutes into the game. Let's talk a bit about the goal that we conceded there fairly early on, Crash. But even before the game, it was one-way traffic, like I said. But, you know, dude, what just a shitty occurrence where, these players just lost focus, lost concentration. That is definitely due to the lack of game time, due to the lack of, just, I guess, just experience. And we let
Yeah.
the goal go, Crash.
Yeah, it was rough, and it's funny because like I tell this to my girls all the time, and they're 9 and 10 years old, and I tell them all the time, don't switch off. You can see it. The ball goes this, or the ball goes there, and I'm like, you're switching off. Switch back. Stay on. Let's go. Focus on the game. And my goal for them is to focus on the game the entire time. Right? You can imagine for a 9 and 10-year-old to focus on anything for more than 30 seconds is hard, right? Um,
Mhm.
but that's something that you have to work on because the game is fast. The game, it can go out of play, and if you take that moment off, a throw in happens, and the next thing you know, you've got a transition, and there's a goal, or there's something like that, right? And this is no different. And and I think the key of it is in training, in moments, in scrimmages, that ball goes out 100% of the time. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Is nobody's running to save that ball on the sideline. So you get trained into a thought of, oh, it's going towards the sideline. It's almost out. He's running for it, but it's fine. it's out. And that's a mentality shift. That is a mental game that every single person has to buy into on the team at all moments, that I'm not taking any moment of this game off. And when you look at it, you go up. I mean, and then I sent out a tweet. I've got there's 3 images I tried to pull from the feed, just to kind of see what was going on. And there was 6 people in the box. I mean, we had 6 Rapids players in the box. One was tying his shoe. One had his back to, I think Cobb had his back to Rothrock. Reggie realized it and started going towards him, but it was way too late because he was taking that off until he realized he had saved it. And I think there was a couple midfielders in there as well. And you look at them, it's just tough because they assumed it was out. And when you assume something in anything, whether it's work, life, or otherwise, you usually get screwed. And this is what happened, right? Rothrock didn't take the playoff. He played it to the point where he slammed into the boards, almost knocked out one of their security people leaning against it, and came back in and put a great cross into the box. And that was the other thing too, is he put a great cross in, but we were checked out, and so we didn't know where the other 2 players in the box were. We were playing 6v3, and one of them was literally on the touchline. And so it's what do? You switch off. That's what happens, and that goal makes 100% to me why it happened, because we weren't mentally focused at the 15-minute mark, which I think is, I would hope and I would imagine, something that Matt Wells has completely drilled into their brain every day of this week.
Homie, you would think so. That's like I said, definitely concentration issue, maybe. But it was definitely a lapse in concentration there, homie, for that point in time.
It's youth and playing time.
And then
those are young guys back there, and they're not used to it, right? It's new. They've got to get into that habit. But at that level, you should.
And
that should be
that was 13, 14 minutes into a brand new season, brand new system. I would prefer, Crash, to see this happen at that moment during that game, instead of have this happen 2-3 months down the road, where that type of mistake is literally unacceptable, and probably has more implications to where we can be at in the table, or just form wise, you know what I mean, as opposed to right now, 13, 14 minutes into a brand new season, bro. Come, like I said, 2-3 months, we might not even remember that goal that we conceded, if everything else is firing how it should be. But even with that goal, Matt Wells in his press conference said that that goal for him didn't really change anything of the game, that he was still already at that point in time an unhappy manager. And I know we'll talk about the press conference a little bit ahead, but he was very unhappy with the way the players were playing, homie, and he was not shy about the way he was. What's the word I'm looking for? He was very shy. He was not shy about the way he was critiquing his players. Crash, are you for that, bro? I mean, myself, positive critique definitely always helps. In fact, as a content creator, homie, when I make content, I always ask for critiques, because that's the best way that I'm gonna figure out what's working and what's not.
Yeah. So the question for me is, I'm always up for critique. I think you need to be able to do that. The difference is, in a corporate environment or a work environment, there's you've got to do it in a way that motivates people to continue, right? The difference of that is, in a competitive environment where everyone's fighting to win, and we're doing that collectively, and that's your job, right, is to be at your peak and your best at all times. The harsh criticism in front of you is warranted. And I think, sometimes you just got to, come out and say the hard things, and that can be motivating, because I know each one of these players is probably their worst critic, right? They know when they don't do something right.
Yeah.
But the other side of it too is, if you have, and this is where I do it, like the mentality of Matt is, he's telling these guys, like, there's another person right behind you competing for your spot. And
Yeah.
and you need to be mentally tough enough to handle that. Like, at this level, at what is the expectation for being a pro athlete in any league, you have to be able to perform at the top level all the time. And you have to understand there's going to be competition. You understand there's going to be stress. Like, there's so many things that go involved. And, what Matt's doing is inducing that level of stress on these guys, because, and not in a way that's negative, but in a way that's like, you have to be able to handle that. And if you can't, that's a problem. And those aren't the people that you want to rely on in the hardest moments out on the pitch. And I think that's the key of it is, if you can't rise to the challenge, if you can't rise to the occasion that's in front of you, we can't expect to win MLS Cup. We can't expect to win Rocky Mountain Cup. We can't expect to win a playoff game. We can't expect to win a US Open match, right? And so at the end of the day, I think that's the level of expectation he has with this team. And so if you're not cutting it, he's never, I didn't see him call anyone out specifically. He called out collectives. And I think that is the benefit. He's not going in there and say Paxton didn't do his job. But what he did say was Harris is doing his job. And so he's praising the people doing the right things and shining a spotlight on those who maybe didn't live up to it, or calling out a collective that didn't live up to the expectation. So I think that in itself is good, because you can look at your buddy, or you can look at your partner, or you can look at your teammate and going, shoot, we didn't do what we needed to do. And so they've got to learn a way to get through that.
I think that Matt Wells being that blunt could potentially be a bit of a. I think Matt Wells being that blunt could have the possibility to affect these players in a negative way. I'm not gonna lie. I just feel like, and I say that because I agree. You do need to be able to do that. I don't know how much you should do it publicly or that openly. And I know that, like, if you deserve your flowers, you should definitely get them. But I've been in the situation before where I've been the example, and they say, why can't you guys be more like him? And that causes issues too. You know what I mean? So at one point, you don't want to be like, oh, here's the teacher's pet type of vibe. You know what I mean? Not that it would get to that, or I hope it doesn't, but it just seems like the mentality in our locker room is probably not the strongest, and not the most not the most toughest. And I think that's probably what Matt Wells is trying to do by saying something like that, like publicly putting those type of expectations out. My whole point is, I think when you do that, you have to do it carefully. You can't probably just be so blunt, is what I'm saying. But who knows, man? There's different tactics, and that's probably the one he's going for. And you're right, bro. At the end of the day, that's my opinion. These guys are getting paid a hell of a lot of money to go out there and freaking just ball up and do something that they've been doing their whole lives, and something that technically they enjoy doing. Crash, I go to work and sometimes I fucking hate my job, but I have to do it because I got bills to pay. These guys get paid to do something that they love to do, bro. So at that point, look, I tried to balance him out, but look, and I'm just playing devil's advocate at this point, Crash. You know what I'm saying? I'm not saying he's right or wrong. I'm just trying to look at both sides of the coin here and saying, if you're going to be doing that publicly, you also, have to be aware of the consequences, I guess, Crash.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think so. And I think at the end of the day, you're right. I I don't think it's a negative. I think it could be a
Hmm.
negative if it's, I think Matt's also establishing an expectation. And
Absolutely.
this is the first game. He's creating a foundation of what he expects from his players. And when you don't play at all with what he has seen and you show up and do whatever they did in that first half and most of the second half, they deserve that criticism because it wasn't good.
Absolutely.
And so I think that's the key of it, right? The other side of it too is we have to balance this with, we just came off of 2 years with Armas, who would never criticize anyone, like, to a fault. And when, like, wouldn't criticize anyone, like, he wouldn't mention that Cabral was a terrible player at a certain point, right? He just didn't fit. He wasn't putting in the effort. We all saw it. He was a great human. He's probably a great teammate, a great guy in the locker room, but on the field, he just wasn't cutting it. And he kept starting him over and over and over again. And so there might be a bit of that Wells is trying to establish, that this isn't, maybe that was what the team was. That's not what the team is now. And you
Yeah.
need to perform. If you aren't performing, you will be replaced. And this isn't I'm going to give you a ton of chances before I make that decision. It's going to be like, no, 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 you're not showing up. I'm going to put somebody in who is going to show up. And I agree with that, right? And I think it gives his players a bit of a notice to say, nobody's safe. And, you know, why not do that on game one when they didn't live up to the expectation? So I'm in for it. It is a bit refreshing to me, but it's something you got to be careful about because,
Yeah.
like we mentioned, Paxton, didn't have the greatest game, and Harris was subbed in and kind of lit it up. Had an opportunity for a good goal, didn't finish it. He got saved, but Wells at the end of that game said the shirt's his if he performs during training all week. So whose shirt is
Yeah.
the question,
Well,
and it would make sense it was Paxton's.
Well, I kind of got that. Here's where it gets interesting, Crash, because I kind of got the impression that he said he talked to Alex Harris and said the shirt was his, right? Is that what you're saying? Because
Yeah,
he
exactly.
he talked to Alex Harris and said the shirt was his, and he doubled down on that at the end of the press conference, bro. He doubled down on that and said it's his. So yeah, homie, where does Paxton sit? You know what I mean? Because he struggled to impact, right? And if you and I are sitting here chatting it up, homie, then let's be real. He underperformed for that game. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
If we're
Oh,
talking
yeah.
about the expectations that we can have for Paxton Aronson, that first game, and again, not we're talking about Paxton Aronson for this part of it. Not to single you out, my homie. The whole squad, collectively. It's just we're talking about you right now, Paxton. We felt like it just struggled to impact the match. Crash. Is it harsh to say that?
No, I don't think so. I think, and I don't want to put it just on him either.
Hmm.
We struggled to get it out, right? We struggled to get the ball out of our own half. And we're building out of the back, so that is on our center backs. That is on our defensive midfield. That is on our
Yeah.
wingers to make those plays. And not to just put all the weight on him, but he is, he was brought in for that reason. He is that DP number 10 that we're, putting the weight of this team to be kind of carried on. And if he doesn't show up and perform at his best, despite what everyone else is doing, he's going to get a lot of criticism. And that is kind of just comes with the territory. So yeah, he's young, and yeah, that's a lot of weight, but it's expected. The other side of
Mhm,
it is he didn't perform that well, but he wasn't the only one. The whole front four,
mhm.
the whole, Yappy, Sealy, and I mean, I would say Hoffa had the best game he could have if he's not getting anybody to feed him service, right? Um, he can't create everything, but Hoffa did what Hoffa usually does and tries to do his best to create things out of nothing or on his own, which makes me sad because he's an amazing player. And if he had a supporting cast that were at his same quality level, we could be really exciting. But we're the Rapids and we don't usually have that. And so for me, I'm gonna say let's wait and see. Let's see how they come together. Um, does Paxton start next game? That would be a big question to me. I could see a world where he doesn't, but it'll be interesting. But I will say he did not perform at his best. You look at the ratings, he did not have a great game. He was one of the lowest rated attackers in the group.
Yeah,
I can look it up here really quick, but um, it was not fun for anybody up front. And let's look here. Yeah, Paxton had a 5.8. Yappy was the only lower at a 5.5. That's not what you want from your DP. It's
yeah.
just not. We can't have.
No, absolutely.
Yeah. So I mean, you've got to at least produce something. You got to be a person that can create chances, create things. And is it because he's in the wrong position? Is it because he's not used to it? Is it because he just had a bad night? I don't know. Maybe who knows?
Yeah.
Maybe they went out and celebrated a little bit too much the night before, and they had a rough game. I don't know. And let's hope it's something like that. And when he shows up on Saturday here at Dick's Sporting Goods Park and just lights it up because he's pissed that he had a crappy game and it's not who he is. And then we see who he really is, and we're excited.
Yeah. Let's go, my homie. I'm super excited about that. Now, just a couple more days, counting down. Dude, just to I totally spaced out that the match was going to be an early match.
Mhm.
So I was a bit bummed, bro. And then I thought I wasn't gonna be able to make it, but turns out I'm gonna be there, baby. Can't wait.
Let's
Sorry, I just
go.
had to throw that out there,
Let
bro.
me know.
Early kickoff, homies. Do not forget it is a 2:30 kickoff this weekend. Um, but anything else that you wanted to say about the game, bro? Honestly, bro, like I just know it was just a shitty performance from us. We tried to get something going in the second half. And the reason I kind of just want to put the game behind us is because, the gaffer has come out and said, from that game now, we're gonna see something different. He came out and said, he was not pleased with let me pull up my notes because I actually I came prepared a little bit for this one. um he was just concerned um that we didn't show up in the first half at all. Says he didn't recognize any bit of that game. And at halftime he looked to make the adjustments. He was definitely not impressed. Neither were Crash or myself were impressed with any of our press because we didn't have any press. No build up, Crash, because there was no build up. And he said he wanted to change the attitude. At halftime, he wanted to change the attitude and part of the tactic bits. He said it was a poor imitation of ourselves. Crash, I want your opinion on what do you think he meant by the attitude part?
Yeah. So for me, that one I kind of struggle with, but the only thing I could think of is, he's preached this idea of dominate and intensity, and he expects a faster tempo, and he's why he's made them run so much to and make them be so physically, fit going into the season. And I think the end of the day is that identity that he's trying to establish and that I think he's probably drilled into them every single day for the entire 6 weeks or so that they were at preseason. They just didn't do it. It was complete, and I think everyone, the eye test from everyone in that first half was like, "What is this team?" Because it's not what we were told, and it's not happening the way we expected it to happen. And so for me, it was, are they trying to like fake us out? Like, was he trying to just hide it, the entire time, and it was something new? But it also looked, like it was counter to that because they seemed lost and they just seemed out of their depth. And I think they probably just came into it too hot and too excited and kind of panicked. And so I think, that's what he's really talking about. It's like that mentality of what he had been preaching for all of preseason just never even materialized in that first half. And so he needed to see an attitude change. They needed to see, why weren't they pressing as a team? Why weren't they doing the triggers that they had talked about? And I think, you come into the second half, and the one thing I just had to add for that game was the one thing that we usually don't have outside of maybe Yappy is substitutes that actually change the game. And I'm still critical. I don't think that any of the substitutes we had come on are really going to dramatically change a game the way that we might need to, but we at least saw them change something. But the floor was so low at that point that any progress was going to be welcomed. So I'm hoping that we continue that rise in ability, and people come on the pitch and realize they have an opportunity to show what they can do to the gaffer and maybe win a shirt. And maybe we are seeing a little bit more on from our subs. So I don't know. The substitutes made an impact. We finished it out with a couple chances, but also, at that point we were down 2-0, and I'm sure Seattle was like, these guys suck. Why do we care anymore? And just played enough game to finish it out.
I just had the vision of them on the bench, like, fuck it, just let them have a little bit. They suck. That was a,
Yeah, I mean, because it happens. You're putting like anybody who's played a sport before, and you're playing a team that you're going to beat, right? You're going to get to a point where it's like, okay, I don't need to do this at 100%. I was at 100% the first half. Yeah, you take your foot off the pedal, and you could see that in the second half. You could see with those chances. So were the second half substitutes better than the first half? Maybe not. Maybe they just had an easier game to play, right? And so I think that's the other part of it too. So I'm hoping that there's a big shift because we need our starters to play at their top level, and because we've talked about it before, we don't have the same depth and quality that other teams have, and so if we're not playing the top peak of our game every single game, it's going to be rough. It's going to be an absolutely rough season.
Well, and I'll get there too. I'll also get there as well because Matt Wells did mention a little bit about that. He said, obviously, the quality was different there, but Matt Wells mentioned that it was a combination of us looking scared and passive defensively. Said we lacked conviction, and out wides he was definitely not impressed with our 1v1s. So I'm assuming, what does that mean, Crash? Well, we weren't taking anybody on.
No. I mean, you got to look at that. I saw that too, and I was like, especially somebody like Dante Seeley, which I've seen him take people on 1v1 and do really, really well. And I never saw him challenge. I was watching back the game the other day when I was, just to kind of check and see what I could find. And there were opportunities where you could see a seam on the wing, and he would kind of come inside, and all he had to do is make a move and take on that wing back or that winger or the fullback on 1v1, and he had an outlet to go the outside. And we all know too, if you played, as a winger, right? You come inside, they're gonna protect the inside and give you the outside every time. Like the outside is safe, right? They're gonna push you to that touch line. But he never even tried. And I was like, dang it. There was a couple times and it triggered, the coach in me triggered going, why didn't you try? Why didn't you push that? Why were you took that opportunity? What's the worst thing that happens is you lose the ball over in their half, and then we have to win it back. Like there was not a negative. So instead he turned it around and just passed it back, right? And so I don't, I was a little, frustrated by the lack of the opportunity taking people on 1v1 because that was a big
Yeah.
part of that system and that kind of that bravery it takes to do that, and they just didn't have that mentality. They felt like they were second class, I think is maybe what the mentality was.
Spot on, my homie. Crash. Then Matt Wells started talking about the second half. He said that he saw his identity. He saw the identity, right? He was just it was really poor within that identity. And that's what he said. He's like, I seen the identity just really poor within that identity. And what I'm trying to get at is he's seen he's seen glimpses of what he's trying to uh get out of the squad. And I think this is what we talked about before, in pods before, we want to see possession from our team, but not just like possession for possession's sake. I call it whiskey dick football. You know what I mean? No penetration. Like you're trying, but we all know ain't nothing gonna happen. Ain't nothing getting through.
Yeah.
And that's what it felt like. Like just possession for what? You know what I mean? So that's kind of what I took from him saying he saw his identity because we talked about this before. We want to see possession from our team, but obviously doing something with that. And lastly, he was just saying he was angry, right? He was angry how we performed, and he wants to make sure that the victims of this defeat are Portland, right? And that means to make sure you use that fuel for your fire. So when we play the next opponent, um,
Yeah. And I think that
crazy.
honestly, that thought of using the anger and the anger that they have for how that they played and turning that into a positive for the play against Portland is important. And, because at the end of the day, they all know they didn't perform. They all know that they didn't live up to the expectation. And what's important is to be accountable for that, right? You need to be accountable when you don't live up to your expectation, when you're not at your best. And none of them can say they are at their best. And so I think what Matt is saying here is that take that anger that you have, that frustration, whether it's with me, whether it's with your performance or whatever that is, and channel that into, okay, I'm going to take that and I'm going to be better this next time. And that level of accountability is absolutely huge. And I love that he's saying that in public because it's setting that tone and that expectation that everyone on this team is fully accountable to their performance and how they live up to it. And that's completely on him too. He's leading by example. And I think that's the key of it. And I hope to see that level of transparency and accountability throughout the season. And I would love to see that level of accountability from the front office. I would love to see that accountability
Yeah.
from the players, from the staff, from the ownership, from everybody, because we're starting to see a little bit of that. Even the last press conference that they did a while ago, and I will touch about it on here in a little bit for the fan forum. But even seeing Kevin Demoff, talking about the level of accountability from KSE. So maybe we're starting to see a shift in that, and I would 1,000% welcome that because good leaders, accountability is one of their biggest attributes. When they don't live up to expectations, when their team doesn't live up to expectations, they find the level of accountability that's required and make that the standard, and they reflect on it, they look at it, where did I fail, and I've got to be better the next time. And that's what we have to do.
Yeah, man, look, the only good thing about this whole situation is it's early days. It's
Yeah.
still early days, my homies. We have plenty of time to iron out these wrinkles. And the positive that I see is you're right, Crash. He's willing to take all of it and just shoulder the responsibility, take accountability, and be that leader that we need, bro. We need somebody to help steer the ship. And you're right, like as much as we want to just have vibes FC and everything copacetic or look like that or feel like that. We had that with Chris Armas, right? We had a dope relationship from fans to manager, manager to player, player to fans. We've had that. And it obviously wasn't translating to the results. You know what I mean? When shit got tough, I kind of felt like we just didn't have the minerals to get it over the line. And when you have somebody who's at the forefront of, this process, and of course getting backed by the people at board, you know, um, just makes me feel better that we have hopefully a plan in place, a man with the minerals to lead us a bit further ahead. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
yeah, sometimes you said this earlier. Armis was never one to kind of put those expectations publicly. Was never one to kind of put that burden. Not necessarily share the burden, but not afraid to kind of push back. You know what I mean? And Matt Wells is definitely kind of a difference from that. And who knows, man, a cultural reset, cultural shift. I guess we're going to have to find out what the first home game of the Matt Wells tenure has to offer, if these players are going to come back and do a better display for us here at home. And Crash, if you don't have anything else to say about the press conference, I guess I could say before the home game match, there's going to be a fan forum. And I guess this is a good opportunity for anybody who wants to get more information, or I guess a bigger a sneak peek or whatever, attend the fan forum before the match.
Yeah. No, absolutely. If you haven't RSVP'd for it or signed up to ask a question, I welcome everyone to do it. It is a bit unfortunate that it's taking place really, before the game when the tailgate is taking place. But
Yeah.
that being said, it's an opportunity to connect with the club. It's an opportunity for us to voice our concerns. We're not having the media or the people who cover the Rapids asking questions for us. And I think at the end of the day, that's the key of it. And we want to make sure that, we're really working to, you know, hold accountability to these, to the front office. And if they don't, that's up to them. But at least we can go out there, we can put our voices out there, and we can tell them, hey, this is what we want, this is what we're looking for, this is what we expect. And if they live up to that expectation, great. But if we don't voice that, we don't tell them what we think, then it is what it is, and we have to kind of just get with whatever we're given. And so I think it's an opportunity for here you have your voice heard and hear it from the horse's mouth. So I welcome everybody to go there and ask their questions.
Dude, that's bang on, homie. I think places like that, or I guess, what would it be? Just times when you're able to put a voice to your opinion, or any opportunity you get to, you said, voice a concern, or maybe ask that question, sh- straight to the source. Here's your opportunity to do so, my homies. It's definitely um a good chance to do so. I know Crash the Confluence asked the question. We'll see if we get it answered. um
Yeah, I'll be there.
but yeah, homie.
Actually, it'll be fun. My daughter is going to come with me. She was really excited to be a part of it, and who knows, maybe she even has a question. But I'll be there. I have a question to ask, and I think that the question is what should we ask? Mine is really going to be around how do we retain players, right? We always complain about getting the best players or not getting any good players or whatever that might be. But we had a Georgie, we had a player that was really good and then decided he wanted to leave. I don't know why. I don't know exactly. We can only speculate. But how do we retain players? How do we what do we do for infrastructure, for training, for, what kind of environment do we want to craft here that makes players going, dang, they have an amazing system here. This is exactly what I want to be at. I posted, I saw a video on St. Louis City on their facilities from a while back. And it was a great little documentary that highlighted all of their stuff. Granted, they're a new club, but they had an amazing facility. They had an amazing training facility. They had a really thoughtful process through it all. And for me, it'd be like, wow, regardless of whether the team is good or not, right? That's a you can have. But going into it, going, hey, they are investing in the players that they bring into this club, and they want them to be at their best at all times. The coach has everything else to do with ensuring that they're playing on the field. But you create an environment, you give them the opportunity to be their best, then they might have that. You might retain or be able to get those players that you never expected. And so that's for me. How do we retain players? How do we get players to come here? How do we make sure that they want to stay?
Homie, Tottenham is they have one of the best, I guess is what they say. They have one of the most modern, the best training facilities. Like they have state of the art, all this and that. And I'm just sitting here thinking to myself, as you're talking about, all these stuff, Matt Wells is going from that to I've seen the training facilities that they use, the physio room and stuff like that over here at the Dick. And I'm just like, wow, huge night and day difference, my homie. So, that type of shit, Crash, has a lot to do with why players wouldn't wouldn't want to stay here, bro. You know what I mean? Just the simple fact that, like, I think I heard last season somebody was telling, it might have even been on one of our shows, how Maxu had a big problem. Like he was like, I have to like literally go outside to train, or like have to how they make the little commute to go train over there.
They have to walk across the parking lot to get to the training fields. Yeah,
to get to the and a lot of places
We've all
have
been there.
an indoor pitch.
Yeah, like we had like we all do it every time we go to a home game. If you've ever parked on the east side of the game, east side of Dick's, that entire parking lot, just on the other side, there's training. That's their training fields, right on the northeast side of the facility. That's not a short walk, right? And I mean, I'm not saying that I care that they're walking, but they're going from the locker room across the field, like across the parking lot, to get to the training fields. And I mean, the training fields they're nice, soccer fields, and they have a turf one and grass one, and there's pictures today of them out on the training pitch, and I was like, holy crap, it's actually green. You've seen any grass anywhere in Colorado right now, it is the dirtiest brown you've ever seen in your life, but they've got it greenish. So they do the fields are okay, but what about the rest? Where are they training? Where is the recovery? Like we've all, like, if you've ever done a tour of the locker room, it's very bare bones. It doesn't look gross. It doesn't look dingy. Like they do a good job to make it look clean and really nice, but it is on par with some National League clubs in England. Like there are teams that aren't even in the fourth division of English football that have better facilities than the Rapids do. And soon, the NWSL team is going to have a facility that is by far the best facility in soccer in the state. And you wouldn't think that an NWSL team is going to have that compared to a professional MLS team. So for me, it's just frustrating, in that capacity.
Perfect opportunity for anybody that has any type of questions to voice your opinion. That's all it is. Crash, that's what we do here, my homie. I mean, basically, we just spend an hour of our time, bro, just voicing our opinions. You know what I mean?
Sure. Well,
Crash, homie, before.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Just on the fan forum, like we're seeing some accountability from Kevin Demoff. We're seeing accountability a bit from the front office and the coaching. Ask the questions now. It's a great opportunity. We're seeing it starting to change, and this is a good opportunity to see if that's consistent. So I welcome everybody to ask those questions just to keep that accountability going.
Yeah. I agree, my homies. And remember, it's an early game. They're gonna have the tailgate. I think they posted at about like 11:30 or 11. The tailgate will be ready with brunch. Always a fun one with brunch, my homies. Um, I'll see what I could do, Crash. I would love to go and join you at the forum, homie. We'll see if I can make it, and we'll go catch some questions as well, homie. Anything else you wanted to add to this episode of the Confluence?
No, I mean, I think for me, the biggest thing is, are we going to make a transition? Are we going to see that shift from how we performed against one Cascadia club to another? And we also have the biggest elephant in the room, the return of our lovely Cole Bassett. And
Yeah.
can we hold him to a scoreless or to a non-goal providing opportunity for him? Because sure enough, he's going to want to try.
Yeah. Well, big up. Crash, I'm actually going to take this opportunity to say something real quick. I want to say I appreciate you, Crash, because you do a lot for this. You do a lot behind the stage for us to be able to have this podcast, homie. And for the people that just listen to this, Crash and I, we're just fans. We have our daily lives. We go to work. We come home. We're dads. We had to shift this pod a little bit later because we were literally both on dad duty up until we got on the mic, my homies. So, Crash, I want to say thank you, bro. Honestly, it's honestly a privilege and an honor to have this show with you. One, because I know you're a rapid sicko, homie, but two, because I know you're a good person, homie, and a father just like I am, bro, and a good dad, bro. So that makes me all the more proud of having this show with you, bro, is to know that I have a good person on the other side of this show with me, bro. So I just wanted to give you your flowers, Crash. And I appreciate you very much so, my homie.
Thank you, Leo. I appreciate you as well. I have thoroughly enjoyed this, and I know we've always kind of joked and said if this ever becomes a chore, we can take a break or take it away. But for me, this is something that I become passionate about just because it's a lot of fun, and I get to do it with a great partner. So right back at you.
Cheers, my homies. Look, don't forget to like the video if you're watching on YouTube. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you're listening on any type of podcast platform, make sure you give us the thumbs up. Make sure you give us 5 stars. Follow us, all that good jazz. Give us some good ratings, good comments, good feedback, even negative critiques, my homies. We're all for it. And if you want to come on and chat it up, get in contact with us, my homies. You guys know how to reach out. We're on all the platforms, my homies. So yeah, let's go. I had a pleasure this one, and up the Piz, my homies.
Yeah. My heart, C38, Lil Coys and KTK. Locals on the fly causing turbulence, causing waves on our way to the confluence. New voice for the fans, from the pitch to the stands. Mile high, locals in the South Bank lads. Leo Coys and the whole need crash. Hold up, what's this? A raft on the water to the confluence. Yeah, it's trance. I'm blind to rhymes and laughter. Head to the waters if it's piss you're after. C38, the time is now. Locals on the drums to hold it down. Like the stream and 2 5 stars. The mile high hot spur crash the car. Yeah.